And for the next 2 hours, we're rising above with a governor whose state is CNBC's top state for business. Governor Rick Perry of Texas is here. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning.
So great to have you in for 2 hours, and it's a pleasure. You're going to speak to so many things. You know a little bit about this latest presidential election and what finally happened, and we want to hear what you have to say about the fiscal cliff as well, because I don't want to kiss up too much about Texas, but Texas to the rest of the country, we may not want to admit it because it's such a big place, and you got the Cowboys, and you got all these iconic things happening down there.
And Johnny Football.
And you got Johnny Football, but things are going well in Texas, and they're not going quite as well in a lot of other places. People say, well, it's oil and gas, and they got handed all these natural resources. But when we have Richard Fisher in, he immediately points out there's a lot more positive things going on in Texas than just the oil and gas industry.
Well, there are, and certainly we're happy that we've got the natural resources and have through the years, but they make up about 12% of our economy now, up from somewhere around 8% back in the early 2000s. So they're an absolute godsend. But the fact is, we have diversified our economy so much through the 90s and particularly the 2000s to a manufacturing type of a background and state, if you will. So the state is doing well. But as Richard Fisher will share with you, it's because we have put into place some relatively simple but profound practices of keeping the taxes low, the regulatory climate fair and predictable, a legal system that doesn't allow for oversuing. We passed one of the most sweeping tort reforms in the nation. And then we passed loser pay to kind of add the next layer of that in the 2011 legislative session that continues to send the message of, listen, if you want to come and risk your capital, there is no place in America that you have a better chance to have a return on the investment than in the state of Texas. We've got a skilled workforce, continuing to develop that skilled workforce and then try to get out of the way. I mean, government to get out of the way as best you can and let the private sector do what the private sector does best, which is create the jobs, which in turn create the wealth.
And when you hold it up as an example of what low regulation, low taxes, tort reform, you hold it up as an example, it's easy to see in individual states what happens when the opposite goes on and things leave. People leave. Yeah. But we can't seem to take the experience in Texas and extrapolate it to the country as a whole. There's still arguments about whether low regulation helps, whether low taxes help. And the problem is people look at Texas and they will find little things. The left will find little things about Texas. They'll say terrible in education. Nobody's health care is covered.
If we were terrible in education,
and your health care,
why would all of these businesses continue?
But you know what I mean? That's what they say. That's what they'll tell you, that there's all these problems with Texas. Yeah. It's a heartless place and nobody's covered by health insurance. The other knock is that. I guess a lot of the business development is I don't know, what do they say? That you've got these grants that you give to private corporations, so it's crony capitalism?
They say that we are competitive.
No, but what is it?
No. I mean, that's
they
the
point
point,
to something and say that there are, what is it, federal or state grants to companies to bring in?
That's called competition. I mean,
is that crony capitalism?
In the real world, that is how you compete. You compete for those businesses. Listen, Rick Scott down in Florida is a competitor. Bobby Jindal, Susana Martinez over on our western side, Mary Fallon up in Oklahoma.
They want business and jobs.
They are all competing for those businesses. If you want to sit there, I'll give you a good example. I think the Martin O'Malley, farmer Dean.
He's in Virginia now, right?
No, I think he's up in Maryland.
Oh, Maryland, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But the former chairman of the Democrat Governors Association, he and I were in a panel one day. He's a bright, capable guy. But he made the comment that, he was a little offended that a governor would come into his state and try to recruit businesses out of his state to go somewhere else. Well, I understand that he might be offended, but the fact is that's how the world works. Competition is what makes you stronger. And putting legitimate competitive policies in place, whether it is grants to help a business move from a place that has overtaxed and overregulate to your state so that the people who work in your business can keep more of what they work for and to be able to take better care of their family is just good common sense. And it's that competition is what I think drives America to be the best economy in the world. So the key is...
What states are the states that are the most likely states that you can poach businesses from that are having the toughest times right now?
Illinois is obviously one of those states. As a matter of fact, when they raise taxes on their personal income tax rates here about a year and a half or so ago, I can promise you, Mitch Daniels was on the phone the next day over to the head of Sears and the head of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange saying, hey, let's visit. We were on the phone pretty quick to him. And now,
have you had businesses that have actually left and have come?
Absolutely, out of California. I mean, that's a target-rich environment, is what we refer to California. They raised taxes again. They sent the message that the unions are going to continue to control the process out there. They defeated Proposition 32. They passed Proposition 30, which was the increase in their taxes. So California businessmen and women are looking at their bottom line and saying, where are we going to go? What are the places?
Is it too much of a leap to say when we do this at the federal level that then they leave the country? Businesses can eventually leave the country. But we can't seem to make that leap to say that. And I'm talking about the fiscal cliff now. And I wonder if you were at 25% of GDP spent on government, if the government had grown to this size where it is right now, and you were trying to figure out how to deal with it, and you were in charge, would it be all about, would the first thing you come up with be raising taxes? Wouldn't you address the spending? Wouldn't you address the spending side? And the Republicans are trying to criticize the Obama proposal by saying you're not cutting spending, you're not coming to us on entitlements, but it's falling flat. No one's really listening, and the White House has controlled the debate that it's all about this upper 2%. I mean, in Texas, the first thing you do is shrink the size of the government.
Well, we did that. We faced a substantial budget shortfall. Now, we have a constitutional amendment that requires us to have a balanced budget, which, frankly, America needs that.
Most states have that.
The states that are, I will suggest to you, the states that are doing better economically have a constitutional amendment that requires them to balance their budget. So we had to deal with that in the early 2000s. And interestingly, it was the first time since the 19th century, since back about 1870, that there were all Republicans, Republican Speaker, Republican House, Republican Lieutenant Governor, Republican Senate, and myself. And we had run on the premise that we were going to treat government differently, that we were going to treat it more like how folks in the private sector have to deal with their businesses, that we weren't going to raise taxes, that we were going to make the hard decisions about reducing spending. And we did that. We filled a $10 billion budget gap in 2003. And here was the result. And I will suggest to you this would be the result in America. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's difficult to say no to all the special interest. But after we made those substantial reductions, 18 months later, as we came back in for the next legislative session, we had an $8 billion budget surplus, more money coming in than we had spent in the previous 2-year period. So there are places in America where if Washington wants to see what happens, they can use my home state as an example of that. We've had experience with
watching this Cliff saga play out. I mean, how would you describe it right now? Do you think it gets settled? Do you think that?
Well, certainly.
Howard Dean's going to be on I'm sure a friend and a governor, and he thinks we'll go over the cliff. He says that's the best way for progressives to accomplish the goals that they want, and I see a lot of people on the right saying.
Well, listen, I'm not interested in somebody's political group being able to stand up and say we won and we came out of this better. What I'm looking at is what's best for America.
What is best for America?
And what's best for America is for us to get our fiscal house in order.
Well, that's the fiscal cliff and the fiscal abyss. We got to get through the cliff to get to settle the abyss.
But the key is you must send the message to those that are going to create the jobs and create the wealth in the future, and that's the businessmen and women, that there is stability, there is predictability on all of these issues, on taxes, on the regulatory policy, and they don't see that. I mean, there are, I think, approaching $2 trillion sitting on the sideline that is not going to be invested in this country because there is no predictability, there is no stability. They are scared to death about what Washington's going to do next. And the reason Texas is as stable, the reason people are moving to Texas in record numbers is because we have created that stability.
But you won your election running on the idea that you were going to treat government differently. President Obama claims that he won his election because he came up with this idea of saying that they were going to raise tax rates on the wealthiest 2% and keep rates where they are for the middle class.
I think President Obama can certainly say that he is got a different outlook on what America should look like, what America's role in the world should be, and a different outlook about the economic future of America. I think he truly believes his ideas. I don't think he's right in those beliefs and those outlooks, because I think the human nature is to be free. The human instinct is to be free from overtaxation, free from overregulation, free from over litigation. And until we free up the entrepreneurs in this country, we are going to struggle economically as a nation. There will be pockets around the country where freedom still matters, where there is still a land of opportunity in America. It's called Texas.
Well, assuming you secede. Anyway, that would be more than a pocket. No, we don't want you to secede now. How about 5 states? We're going to ask you about that. You're allowed to split into 5 states, aren't you? We could use those 10 senators. Are you allowed to do that?
I'll be real honest with you. That's not going to happen.
Really?
No.
3 states? 2 states.
We're going to maintain the state of Texas the way that it is.
You know, I knew it because they like being big. And if you split them up, then it'd be North Texas,
we're going to
South
continue
Texas.
to be a beacon for all people that want to live free.
Right,
we're there. Come on down.